one. Hey, beautiful Gemsters, and welcome back to another segment here on Gems Podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening. For those of you that are new to the community, welcome. You are now a Gemster. And with me today is Cory Rosenke, and he is an author, pastor, presenter, and a tenacious pursuer of truth. Cory Rosenke is both the concept pioneer and foremost authority on the cravings of the soul. Through sermon, session, workshop, and manuscript, he is dedicated to the pivotal work of connecting hungry souls to the joy of their maker. In a world where truth and reality have become shrouded in debilitating ambiguity, Cory specializes in reasserting the clarity of divine design and definition. And that's not all Cory does, and a bio could only do so much. But I want to welcome the man behind it all, Cory Rosenke.
Genesis, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
My pleasure, Cory, and I hope I did not butcher your name, but I definitely want to give you a chance to connect with the audience in a fun and personal manner. We could either do that by a rapid 10-question game or an icebreaker. What are you feeling?
Oh, let's go with the 10-question game.
Here we go, y'all. We're playing rapid fire with Cory and Genesis. Do. Question numero uno. Cory, what is one word to describe you?
Intense.
Question number two, what made you so passionate about your love of God?
Oh man, just his goodness towards me, his undeserved goodness towards me.
Question three, you get 3 random acts of kindness per day as a minimum. What are your 3 today to do for someone else?
I think to listen to them, because a lot of people are not fully listened to. I think to encourage them. A lot of us go through life without experiencing encouragement, as strange as that sounds. And the third one would be to just allow them to be them and accept them for who they are. So many of us always feel like we have to put on masks for people. And I always want people to know you don't have to put on a mask with me. I accept you as you are.
Love it. Question 4, name a hard time in your life that actually built character.
Oh man, I would say I would go way back even to my childhood. I was raised in deep, deep poverty. And I think that's what I had a choice. I could get lost in discouragement, or I could get lost in the wonder of God's world. And I chose wonder, thanks to God's grace. And I think that but going through that trial of poverty made me look at the world with more authentic eyes. And I would say that was definitely a benefit for me.
Okay. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. So question 5 here, and I think this is going to kind of correlate with your upbringing. So when you began this quest to become a pastor, was it something that you already knew that you wanted to do, or was it just life circumstances that led you to wanting to take on the role of a pastor?
Right. Yeah, for me, I'll give you the short version of that. I was a musician, doing music in church, and it got to the point where other churches wanted me to do music at their church as well. So I kind of had a traveling ministry where I'd go to different churches doing music. And during that period in life, I fell in love with Jesus. And so suddenly I would go to churches and I didn't just want to sing. I wanted to talk to them about life and the goodness of God in between songs. So much so that one of the pastors said one day, you might as well just preach. And so I preached, and boy, that changed everything for me. So for me, it was kind of an unexpected, almost a revelation type calling.
Okay, all through the power of music, which ministers to
Mhm.
people in various forms and facets. So I love
Yeah.
that. So question 6, when I know you write, so the book that is behind you, Heart's God, is that what it says?
The magnetic heart of God,
Yeah.
understanding the 5 cravings of your soul.
Mm. How did you come up with the title of that? And hold it up so those
Yeah.
who are watching the video can see.
Yeah. Really the title came up to it as in, as we'll talk about perhaps more about later, is that more than a brain or a body, we are souls. And it's
Mhm.
something that we forget in our world today. The world is almost exclusively in pursuit of the biological, and yet the deepest part of us is non-biological. And so what I've done in the book is I explore the cravings of the soul, and I believe that these cravings did not evolve; they were placed in us intentionally by God, um, for the purpose of drawing us back to Him, because ultimately, only in Him can they be satisfied. And so that's why the book's called The Magnetic Heart of God. It's like there's these cravings built into all of us, whether we're people of faith or not people of faith. Those same cravings are built inside of us, and like a magnet, we are drawn to God because only in Him can they be satisfied. And of course, we're human beings, so what do? We try to find satisfaction in
Mhm.
wealth and in education and in other
Yes.
people, but ultimately they can only be satisfied in God.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that because we're definitely going to unpack some of that further in the discussion. So we're on question 7, right? Keep me honest here. So question 7, what is your drink of choice? Is it coffee, tea, or something else?
If it's a hot drink, it's hot chocolate.
Oh, okay, different. I like that. Question 8. You just came across a windfall of cash. Cha-ching, cha-ching. However, before your proceeds are released to you, you must contribute to 3 charities of your choice. What charities are you donating to?
Oh man, I'm going to donate to a local pregnancy care center, Real Options. I'm going to donate to Samaritan's Purse because I love that the work that they do in rebuilding places. Like as I mentioned to you off when we were off air, I've been on several trips to Houston, for that matter, rebuilding after hurricanes. And the third one, what would the third one be? I would say the third one would be some sort of Down syndrome organization that I could support.
Okay. So, audience, if you have not heard of any of these charities, I encourage you to go look up these charities to see if they're tied to your heartstrings, if you would like to contribute in this area as well, because it is better to give than receive. And we are now coming up upon the holiday season here, but make every day a holiday because once you're a blessing to somebody, you don't know how you are that person who felt like they had nobody. So, question 9, Cory, where are you originally from?
I am originally from Alberta, Canada. I grew up there, born and raised, and it's only been in the last 7 years that I've lived in California in the United States. So I'm a citizen of Canada and a legal resident of the United States.
Love it. And question 10, it is our pass or play question. And here are the rules. If you pass, our rules are reversed, and this is where you ask me a question. If you choose to play, I ask one last question to wrap up rapid fire. So, are you passing or playing?
I will pass.
Okie dokie. The roles are reversed here. So, Cory, what is your question for me?
All right. If you could give a young lady um, one piece of mentoring advice, what would it be?
Never stop believing in yourself, and definitely don't second guess who you are and the potential that you bring to the table.
Very nice.
So, y'all, that just concludes Rapid Fire with Cory and Genesis. I hope you learned a little bit more about who Cory is. And now we're going to zoom over to the main part of the segment, which is some of the work that Cory is doing. So, he likes to talk about some various things pertaining to the soul, because we all heard that the mind, body, and soul are all interconnected and intertwined. So today I want to unpack what proof is there that mankind has souls, and then we're going to dive into the relevance of a soul. So Cory, your question, what proof is there that mankind has souls? Because some people just think that we're a body with no soul.
Yeah. Well, it's true, and more and more in academia today, it's been a recent thing in recent years, and only recently, that the soul has really been denied. And so, whenever I get asked this question, and I appear on a lot of shows, radio broadcasts, television, and I'm often asked this question, and I generally like to start by saying, "You are your own best evidence that you have a soul."
Mhm.
And that is true of each of us. There is something inside of us that intuitively knows that we exist beyond biology. And that intuition really comes out because we crave things that are not biological cravings, and they are certainly not in line with what some people might call evolution. So, as an example, we as human beings crave justice. We crave the distinction between a moral right and a moral wrong. No other creature on earth has this craving. It's just us, right? We crave identity. And whenever I talk about identity, and I especially dive into this in my book, the craving of identity asks four symbiotic questions. Who am I? Why am I? Do I have value? Do I have purpose? Again, there is no other creature on earth that asks these questions. These are non-biological questions. And C.S. Lewis once said that cravings do not exist unless satisfaction for those cravings also exists.
Mm-hmm.
So as an example, we say we feel hungry. Well, there's such a thing as food, right? If there was no such thing as food, we would never have developed a hunger for it, right? A baby duck, as soon as it comes out, it wants to swim. There should never be a desire to swim if there is no such thing as water, right? Because there's water, there's a desire to swim. And the same thing is true of us. We crave the eternal. We crave something beyond biology, beyond, just simply the flesh, and the biology that we are constantly kind of striving against on earth. And the very fact that we have that craving proves that it exists, because cravings do not exist without satisfaction for those cravings. So that's point number one. And point number two kind of brings it all together. And I say we have the evidence of unanimous and uncoerced conclusion. And by that, I mean that virtually every culture in history, whether they lived in the desert or on a mountain or by a lake, right? Whether they were fishermen or farmers or hunter-gatherers, whether they built their houses out of blocks of snow or buffalo hide or rock or wood, they all came to the same conclusion, that we exist beyond biology. Just think of that for a moment. The awareness of the soul did not travel around the world like religions did, right?
Okay.
Religions were moved around. Every culture. So when the Europeans came to North America and they met the native peoples, the Europeans believed in a soul, but they came to the native peoples who already believed in a soul. They brought a form of religion, but they did not bring an awareness of the soul, right? The Romans believed in a soul, and then they invaded Brittany way back in the day. But in invading Brittany, they invaded people who already believed in a soul. We think of Africa, the continent of Africa. Each tribe, each member believed in a soul long before they were ever had any kind of outside influence thrust upon them. And so when you think of the fact that every culture unanimously and independently came to the same conclusion, I mean, that's as scientific a fact as you can get, right? I'll often say if my son comes running into the room and he says, "Dad, did you hear that loud screech?" And I'll say, "No, I didn't hear that screech." I wonder if he's hearing things. But then my wife comes in from the garden and she says, "Honey, did you hear that loud screech?" I'm like, "Oh, two testimonies from different places. Maybe I should listen." And then there's a knock on the door and the neighbor comes in. "Did you guys hear that screech?" It's like, I didn't hear it, but clearly there was a screech, because there's all these independent testimonies. You take that simple little analogy and you multiply it thousands of times. Every culture on earth came to the same conclusion. I mean, that's as scientific a rock solid fact as you can get.
Okay, I love that there, because you know what? I think that, okay, let's take the phone, for example. So this is my phone here. So the phone is just the phone. And some people feel like the body is just the body. And they say, when I die, like that's the end of me. But some people also believe on the flip side, when I die, it's my body that is going in the earth, but my soul is transcending into either the next area, which some people believe in heaven and some people believe in hell. And I think for those who believe that, my body is just my body, but my soul is what is going on to everlasting, those are the people that truly believe that the soul is there. And it's the soul that is connected to the body, and the body is connected to the mind. So on the opposing side, for somebody that says, well, I really don't believe it either. I don't really believe that there's a soul there, because I really don't believe in heaven or hell. How can we, encourage those people to see things differently? We're not saying that we're going to persuade you, but we're just giving you a new vantage point, because you gave two valid points there. But then, some people still like to say the proof is in the pudding.
Well, and I would say the proof is in the pudding, right? Right. That is, yeah. So as an example, so I speak to Christians, Buddhists, Muslims. I've spoken to people who are self-identified as witches or mediums. I speak to
Oh.
psychologists, various doctors, and because everyone is hungry to hear about the soul. So when we first kind of step in a conversation about the soul, it doesn't have to be religious in nature to start with. In fact, I would say that the reason why there are so many religions in the world today
Mm-hmm.
is because people have been trying to explain what they already know about themselves, right? And that's why there's so many independent religions that have developed over time. And so, as again, to those type of people, I would say you inside of you, as again, you have desires that are not of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to acknowledge that those desires would not exist unless something apart from this world existed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the conversation of the soul doesn't have to start in religion. In fact, it rarely does. Religions
Mm-hmm.
actually started because of our awareness of the soul, right? And so as a pastor, obviously, I believe that God created us this way on
Mm-hmm.
purpose. And that the cravings of our soul, the 5 cravings of our soul, as I identify in the book, are good and beautiful cravings when we operate in them as God designed us to operate in them. And on the flip side of that, all the chaos we see in the world today is a result of us pursuing those cravings in fallible places and infallible ways.
Okay. And I like that you said that, because as a pastor, you're saying what you believe in, and your beliefs is not going to be everyone's belief. But we're also
Right.
saying for those of you who may not be religious, is that you don't necessarily need to believe in religion to believe that there is a soul. So
Yeah.
for someone saying, okay, how do I nurture and cleanse my soul and really find relevance to my soul? Because sometimes if they're not in synergies and they don't have that balance, they could feel like, okay, my mind is telling me to do one thing, my body is not aligning with my mind. So then how can I get my soul in reverence? And feel free to rearrange that question if it did not
Yeah.
come out right.
Right. Well, I guess I would say I would arrange it this way, and I would say that the hierarchy of ourselves, of our
Hmm.
personhood, is more than a brain or a body. We are a soul.
Hmm.
Our soul sends directives to the mind, and our mind sends directives to the body.
Okay,
That is
so
our
soul,
soul. Yep.
mind, body.
Yes. The soul is the center of your personhood, is the center of your personality. It is the root of your motivations in life. And so there is a great movement in today's world that's very important, and it's a good movement. I'm not don't
Mhm.
I'm don't let what I'm about to say next disparage that. It's very true. But there's a big move towards mental health, and there
Yeah.
absolutely should be. For a long time, we have not acknowledged these issues, and
Yes.
it's been a real problem. However, there are a lot of issues that have been assigned as mental health issues. What
Mhm.
I would say to you, they are actually soul issues,
Mm.
because let me just give you kind of a snapshot of my journey in life. Coming from the poverty background that I did, I escaped by delving into philosophy. I was super into, and I still am. I still enjoy it.
Mhm.
The philosophers, Aristotle, Plato, Confucius, all different kinds of philosophers. Um, I didn't find the answers I was looking for there. In fact, philosophy generally asks more questions than it answers, but it's a beautiful study. But ultimately, you're not going to find purpose for your life in philosophy.
Mm.
And so that moved me to psychology. And I still to this day love the study of psychology. For a while, I was really big into Sigmund Freud, specifically in his work at trying to explain the development of personality and how he talked about the id and the ego
Mhm.
and the super ego. The truth of the matter is, the more you get to know about Freud, the more crazy he kind of becomes.
Right.
But ultimately, psychology is an interesting thing. But again, it's if you're looking for purpose and meaning, you're not going to find it in psychology. And then today, and I'm fascinated by this study too, it's a study of neuroscience, right?
Mm.
The neuroplasticity of the brain and the way it functions, the way that outside experiences will actually change the shape of your brain, and then through counseling or through self-disciplines, how it can actually be changed back into a healthy form again. The brain is an amazing thing. When we talk about dopamine, right, and serotonin and all the chemicals that fire back and forth, all the neurons, it's amazing study. But at the end of the day, philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience are the study of mechanism.
Mm.
They are not the study of source. They are like studying a car and being fascinated by doors that open, an engine that starts, an electrical system that moves. But the truth of the matter is that car can do nothing without a driver behind the wheel.
Okay, so
And
let's
so,
let's
yeah, so they're the study of mechanism. And so what I'm wanting to get to dig down to is the study of source. Where did
mm,
these come? Where does your personality come from? Where do these deep
mhm.
desires within you come from? They don't come from your mind. They come from the soul.
So then, as they come from the soul, I think that could also play into human behavior, why we
Absolutely.
behave a certain way. And I like that you brought up neurosciences because neurosciences can also factor into the study of human development, which a lot of people are talking about human development, human design, and they're pairing that with neurosciences. And then if you think about psychology and pairing that with sociology, how the two intertwine. Can you talk about the importance of human behaviors and how it correlates with soul
Right. Well, as I mentioned, philosophy, psychology, neuroscience is the study of mechanism. It's
mechanisms?
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of like cutting in on there's a line of dominoes that are falling. It's kind of like stepping in halfway through, this line of dominoes that are falling. But it's not explaining what knocked them over to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so in order to understand what knocks them over to start with, we have to look at the soul. And so
Mm-hmm.
in my book, again, the book is called The Magnetic Heart of God, Understanding the Five Cravings of Your Soul. And what I put forth is that there are five primary cravings of our soul. And the reason I call them cravings of the soul is because they are deeper than psychology. Right. They are non-biological cravings. They are a layer underneath. Um, and these five cravings are the root of all human ambition. They're the reason why some of us really want to get married, and they're the reason why other people are desperate to get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
They're what drive us towards wanting to get a degree on our wall,
Yeah.
or wanting to like make a lot of money. They are the root of all of our human behavior. And so the reason I bring this up and the reason why I find it so important is just think of this for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a world right now of unprecedented prosperity. Even though right now, some people are saying we're going through a recession and all that stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
a paycheck doesn't last as long as it used to, and all that stuff is probably true. We still live in a time of unprecedented prosperity. There's never been a time in history where a generation like the generations that are alive today have had such unfettered access to comfort, to
Mm-hmm.
leisure, to entertainment, to education, to wealth opportunities, to world travel. We have more than any generation in the history of the world, and yet every study shows us to be more unhappy than ever.
Mm.
Fascinating. The more we get, the more, I should say, the more biological things we accumulate, the more unhappy we are. Why? Because the answer isn't there.
It's within
You know,
the soul.
yeah, our culture is obsessed with pursuing and catering to the cravings of the body and the mind, the body and the
Mm-hmm.
mind, the body and the mind, right? And we've forgotten our souls. And I believe that is the reason why we see the chaos in the world today. I heard a quote from Jim Carrey, actually just a couple of weeks ago. Jim Carrey is a Canadian comedian,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he said, I wish that everybody could experience riches and fame so that they would finally realize that it's not the answer."
Yes. Oh wow, that is a
Right.
powerful quote.
Yeah, and the reason being, like I said, we think that if we can accumulate these biological things, that we will somehow have peace. And to be honest, it's a great lie that's been happening for thousands of years. You can even go
Mm-hmm.
back into biblical times. We've been told if you will reach the top of that financial mountain,
Mm-hmm.
if you will reach the top of that intellectual mountain, or that social mountain, or that sexual mountain, or whatever that mountain is,
Mm-hmm.
you will find peace. And ours are the generations that have reached the summit and we found that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And that is the reason I think there is more confusion today than ever. There, under the surface, there is this like boiling rage. There's
Mm-hmm.
depression, right? Because we finally realized we've been pursuing peace and happiness in all these biological places
Yes.
where it can't be found.
Yes, and I think because more and more people are vying for those tangible items because we now have social media, we have television that is telling us a vision, and all of these things that are constantly vying for things where they think those things are going to validate who we are, but we're still empty inside, not realizing that we need to connect with ourselves internally in order to manifest what we truly want externally. So let's give the audience some tangible examples here before we wind down and go into the CTA. So, what is a tangible exercise that those listening in on this segment can do so they could start to really connect with who they are at the root and at the soul level?
Right. Well, I guess I would first say this: knowledge is awareness. So if you gain a new knowledge, you are gaining a new awareness. And so what I would wish for people to start with is to take a pause and to realize what I believe they already know about themselves. I believe all your listeners already know this about themselves. You are not the reflection looking back in the mirror. You are not the number on the weigh scale. You are not the diploma on your wall or the balance in your bank account. More than any of that, you are a soul, right? And the day that we actually come to a full awareness, a full knowledge of this, right? It absolutely changes everything because it changes our priorities. But what's happening to most of us today is we are in rapid pursuit of beauty or what we perceive to be beauty, right? Um, or wealth or power. And yet all of those are fragile accumulations that will not last. In fact, I think that they are the root cause of most of our stress. So as far as an exercise, the exercise would be this: to pause for a moment, right? In all the rush of your day, all the things you are doing, and ask yourself, how am I feeding my soul? Because you can feed your body, you know what, and that's good. You want to definitely want to do that. And you can feed your mind, you can read and be entertained. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're not doing something to feed your soul, you will feel empty inside. And so that would be my, I guess, my first exercise would simply be to pause and ask yourself, as you have this new awareness, hey, I exist beyond biology. That's not some sort of creepy religious statement. That is a factual human statement, right? That each one of us exists beyond biology. And for you to sit down and allow that awareness to wash over you. Exercise number one. Yeah.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that exercise, y'all. And I encourage Cory, that is just amazing. And y'all, I encourage you to pause and really be intentional with the pause. Cut off any distractions, your cell phones, the TV, the radio, anything that will take you away from really being connected in the period that you are pausing to really do this exercise. Now, Cory, I want you to tell the audience how they could get in contact with you. What is your website so they could become a part of your community and learn more of what you have going on and
Well,
your
thank you
call
so
to action?
yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah, so my website is CoryRosenke.com, and it's just my name.com, and that is kind of the best centralized place. You can actually contact me directly through the website. The website will also, share a little bit about who I am and get people some options as where they can get my book. Also, if you were interested in the book, you could just type The Magnetic Heart of God into any internet search, and it'll bring up you can get the book somewhere near you. Really, my goal, I have to tell you, be honest with you, Genesis, my goal has really been, I'm so passionate about this. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a pastor, but I'm not approaching this as someone who's um, trying to convert people to Christianity. I'm approaching this in that I believe we live in a world where we have forgotten what it means to be human. And when you think of all our accumulations today, all the prosperity, the poorest among us today have more than the kings and queens of mere decades ago. It's quite a fascinating thing. And yet to see the hopelessness, the despair, the anger that is gripping our culture, right? And I believe it's because people have forgotten who they are. More than a brain or a body, they are souls. And if we're going to find peace and happiness, right, we're going to have to start heeding those internal cravings, not just the cravings of the body and the brain.
Yes, man, you dropped so many gems for your just wealth of knowledge. And I just love that you have the book out there, which can be a tool and resource to individuals who really want to learn about how to connect with their souls and the relevance of their souls and the why behind that within five easy steps, as well as just taking time to pause because we're all so busy. But just whenever we are intentional with pausing and just really connecting with who we are internally and at the root, we could really see why we're doing certain things, who are we, and not what the world wants us to be. I think that's so important. And I just love that you link your information and your book. So, y'all, make sure you go get involved with Cory and what he has going on. And make sure you like, comment, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. We're available on 40 plus audio platforms. And if you want to watch the video to this recording, head on over to YouTube and go to Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp is our channel, and you'll see the video to this recording. And my big ask is for brand sponsors. It is paid sponsorship because it does take resources to fuel the mission and movement behind the show, which is to consistently bring content that is educational, inspirational, and motivational, while also weaving in DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And with us linking arms, it's taking us to move the needle further and make this world better than we found it. So until the next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Remember, you matter. You're here for a purpose, on purpose, and don't ever let somebody tell you what you aren't, because you know who you are. So it's time for you to walk into authority without having someone shape and mold you to who you know you're not supposed to be. I hope that encourages you. Until next time, y'all, be blessed.